Right, so basically all of these tools are with demos, so if you don't know how to run a specific tool, I will show you how to do that. Make sure that you watch till the end. You can also leave some basically timestamps, so if you know a specific tool and you just want to skip to one of the tools you have never maybe seen, make sure to skip through. Also, if you want to check ethical hacking, basically the fastest way, and with secret techniques and possibly make some money with bug bounty in the future, make sure to check out my hacking course, which will be in the description below. It's also on discount, so peace. Also, if you want to get some free information, I share a lot of information for free on Twitter. Make sure to follow me. Peace. Right, so the first basically tool I want to show you is Proxychains. Proxychains is very, very powerful. It allows you to anonymize yourself within applications. It allows you to basically send requests being anonymized, completely anonymous, right, on the internet, because what it does, it redirects your traffic through the Tor, right? And I'll show you how to do this. So all we need to do is just sudo apt serve install Tor. I have installed, so it won't install for me, but it should absolutely install for you. Make sure, if it doesn't install, make sure to update your Kali. How to do this, just sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. I'm just not going to do that because it'll take too long. So basically, once you have the Tor installed, now a very, very quick disclaimer. You're not installing the Tor browser, you're installing the Tor. The Tor basically service that allows you to direct your traffic through the dark web, right? I'll also when I show you the Proxychains, once I finish showing how to install Proxychains, I'm going to show you how to install the Tor browser, just in case you may want to install one, right? I'll show you how to do that. So basically what we need to do is just do sudo service Tor start. Once it starts, all we need to do is just type status. And if it says active, it means it's working. However, we cannot trust this. We need to basically make sure that it does actually work. Right? Also, if you as you can see, it says tor.service, anonymizing over relay network for TCP. Now, how to actually basically configure Proxychains, right? Because we need to configure Proxychains. So what we need to do is just do sudo nano etc proxychains4.conf. And what you get is a big text file. Now, you don't need to use nano, you can use whatever you want. However, I do recommend use nano. If you're a beginner, just follow what I'm doing. There's 4 basically chains that you can use: dynamic, strict, round robin, and random. It's completely up to you which one you want to choose. However, I do recommend using random or dynamic, right? Up to you which one you choose. How to choose one? All we need to do is just decomment it, right? So as you can see, my random chain is decommented. So there's no hashtag, right? All you need to do is just remove the hashtag. Now go down, make sure proxy DNS is uncommented. Go down, just go all the way down. There's nothing there you need to do. And what we need to do is add, basically you need to have SOX4, loopback address, which is 127.0.0.1, port 9050. Don't change anything here, right? Keep it as it is. The reason is because that's what Tor uses. Tor uses 9050 port. And add one more entry, right? Just copy what I have. SOX5, loopback address 9050. Once you do this, all you need to do is press Ctrl X. Now for you, it says save modified buffer. I'm going to click no. The reason is because I don't want to configure my file. I just showed it for you guys. Now once you do this, you're basically set. But a quick disclaimer, also one other disclaimer is every time you want to use Tor and you restart your machine, unless you set it otherwise, you need to basically turn it on every single time. And I will show you how to basically troubleshoot to make sure that it is working, right? So what we need to do is just type in Proxychains for Firefox, right? Or the application you want to use and the commands, right? Now, as straight away as you can see, basically what we have done is launched the Firefox and Proxychain, through Proxychain, sorry, on the terminal. So if I close this terminal, what happens is basically the browser will close, right? One more thing also, it is important that you basically come here sometimes and make sure that everything's working. Sometimes what might happen is you may not, basically it may say rejected or denied, which means basically you're not allowed to connect because of whatever reason. Most likely the reason is because the administrator of the website has disabled proxy, right? It has disabled Tor address, or it has blocked your IP address, right? Right, there also could be a million reasons, right? Now, one way to test if your IP address has been changed, if you come to dnsleaktest.com, one of the most popular websites to check your IP address, and there you go, right? And that's not, I'm not in Germany, I can tell you this, right? So, and also this is your IP address, right? I've tested this multiple times. This works. If you make a request to our website through this browser, it will basically display this IP address, right? And obviously, because this is not my IP address, it's sound and safe, right? Also, one more thing I wanted to show you is, what did I want to show you? I think that's it, right? Oh, sorry, the Tor browser. Now, how to install the Tor browser? It is very, very simple. You need to go to google.com or whatever you want to do. Actually, no, I'm going to use, no, exactly. Right, so to see, the first thing is Google will ask you for CAPTCHAs. Now, because this is a Tor network, as you may not or know, basically it's run by people. So basically my connection can be directed through multiple computers and multiple networks in the world. So it can take some time for this to load, right? Especially with CAPTCHAs, it can be very, very slow. Or anything else, it's very, very slow because we're redirecting our traffic through multiple networks, right? So sometimes what you can do is we can get a Tor node in Norway, then Germany, and then America. That's a big transfer of data has to go through. It has to go through basically 3 continents. That's a lot of basically sending data through, right? Now, by the way, just important, upon launching a Tor browser, I do recommend doing this on a virtual machine. Remember that we're accessing the dark web. This is not regulated. You can find anything here. From people getting killed, executed, from CP, from Club Penguin to anything. And I mean anything, right? So I do recommend having a virtual machine. Just in case something happens, you can delete the virtual machine. Obviously, remember that you can also get viruses easily, right? I'm just going to show you the hidden wiki, which is one of the most popular destinations upon launching the dark web. So let's go to the hidden wiki, right? Upon searching the hidden wiki, as I said, remember how I said your traffic's being redirected? As you can see, it goes through Poland, Germany, and Panama, right? That's how the traffic goes. You can always refresh. As you can see, new Tor circuit for this site. It will basically redirect your traffic from another country. Through another, basically gives you a new Tor connection. What I do recommend for good anonymization, I do recommend getting 3 different countries or at least 2 different countries on the same Tor circuit, right? So let's go to the hidden wiki. Right? And as you can see, we have basically the hidden wiki, right? So let's go to Bitcoin Mixer, for example, just an example, Bitcoin Mixer. And what this does, it will redirect your traffic to an Onion site. Onion is the dark web, right? So if you see .onion at the end, it is a dark web website, right? And you cannot access it through the normal browsers. It doesn't basically allow it, right? Now remember, I said this is the dark web. This is very, very slow. It can take, not hours, I was going to say hours. It can take minutes or it can take seconds to load, right? As you can see, it gives you a low sort of, gives you .onion. That's, if it says .onion, it is a dark web website. Right, so basically what I want to show you is a very, very powerful website and a very, very powerful tool. The website is called CrackStation and the tool is called Hashcat. And I guess you've maybe have used it before. If not, then I'll explain what these are. Basically, when you sign up or you put any password in, it's basically being hashed. Right, so it's not revealed in plain text because that's sort of bad security. And basically what allows you to do, if you find a hash MD5, there's also lots of hashes, right? Especially this can also help you for cracking any passwords. For example, if you have a Bitcoin wallet or something, I don't really use Bitcoin. If you have a Bitcoin wallet or something, then what you can do is extract the password and you can crack it. So if you forget your password for your, I think Ledger it's called, you can crack it, right? Right, I will demonstrate how this works exactly because it's better. Obviously examples are better than 1,000 words. So let's say my password is administrator, right? Just something simple so it doesn't take long. Obviously remember, the more complex password, and if it's not contained in a word list, you might not be able to crack it at all, right? And as you can see, this is basically you get your string, which is administrator, MD5 hash, and SHA-1. These are hashes. Most of the tools or Hashcat or CrackStation will be easily able to crack these passwords, right? So let's take this MD5 hash, right? Let's actually take SHA-1. Let's put it to CrackStation. Let's just paste it in. Let's do the captcha. Wherever. Oh my god. Right, give me a second. I was just gonna guys do this. There we go. I've managed to show them that I'm a robot. Okay, so crack hashes. And as you can see, it says the hash, SHA-1, and it tells you what the result is, right? So if you were to find this in a password or a text file, what you can do is crack this and you would get the plain text credential or the secret that you're looking for, right? Now you can do the exact same thing with Hashcat, right? Hashcat is more useful when it comes to doing lots of files or lots of hashes, because crack station only allows you to do non-salted hashes and 1 per line, and also allows you to do, as I said, maximum of 20, whereas Hashcat doesn't have a limit, right? So if you open up Hashcat-H, you should always use -H, because that launches the help menu. So as you can see, these are all hashes, right? So as you can see, we have salted hashes, we have some Java object hash codes, we have, I think it's down the bottom, Bitcoin wallets. Yeah, so as you can see, we have cryptocurrency wallets, MetaMask wallet, Bitcoin, Electrum, blockchain. There's a lot of things, right? Hashcat is a very, very powerful tool. It allows you to basically crack any hash. Even allows you to crack Skype. But if you come down the bottom, it basically tells you the basic example, right? Which is the best way to sort of learn how to use Hashcat. So I'm just going to do an example, right? What we're going to do is I'm going to crack an MD5 hash, right? So we're just going to do Hashcat. -A specifies the mode, right? So mode is word list. So that's 0, right? 0, word list 0. We're going to be using a word list for this. 0-M specifies the hash mode or the hash type. For this case, 0 is MD5, so I'm going to use 0, right? And we're going to put a hash. So we're going to do a single quote, and I'm going to copy the hash, right? Just copy the hash, come back to the terminal, paste it. Don't forget to put the single quote, and now we need to specify the word list. I'm going to use Rockyou because that's the biggest word list, and that's one of the best. So I'm going to use user share word lists Rockyou.txt. And if you press enter, what's going to happen, it will crack it within seconds. Right? Let's just let it run. It should take literally a couple seconds or a second to run. Right, so as you can see, basically it has cracked the hash, and it took basically, well, it doesn't really, it took like a bit longer. I think the reason is because maybe the administrator is located maybe a bit like down the bottom. Doesn't matter, right? It done it pretty quick. Well, it actually tells you how much it basically went from million. So administrator is about, it's about down the bottom, that's why it took so long. So basically, as you can see, this tells you the hash, and it tells you the plain text, password or credential. You can also basically, you can do is crack files, which I'll show you in a second how to do, but let me show you the results so you sort of understand how this works. So this is just a bit useless information, we don't need to know this. And it basically tells you, so dictionary cache hit, it tells you the file name, passwords, bytes, and key space, whatever that means. Session, oh by the way, this is very important, session Hashcat status cracked. If it says cracked, it has found the password. Hash mode MD5, hash target tells you the hash, time, and sort of that's not really important for the other anything else. Now, if I run this again, what's going to happen is, as you can see, it basically cracked it, but it didn't display it. Now what you can do is either -- show, like it says here, -- show, right? But if you, for example, get one file and then you want to crack another file, what you have to do is put a special command. Because what Hashcat does, once it cracks the same hash, it will never crack it again, right? So if I run this again, as you can see, it never cracked it again. So to do this, for basically force Hashcat to crack it again, we need to put a special command. And this special command is --pot file -disable. And what's going to happen is, you can see it cracked it again, right? It recognized the hash and it cracked it again. And as you can see, we have cracked the hash again. Now, as I said, you would use this if you were to crack a file 1 and then you would crack another file, right? Because the hashes obviously people sometimes have the same passwords, right? Or secrets can be the same. So it is important that you do put file disable if you're cracking multiple hashes or multiple files, or cracking a very, very common sort of hash, right? So very, very simple. Right, so we're just going to do is I'm going to show you how to crack the files of hashes, right? So basically what we're going to do is Hashcat -A, still the same word list attack, -M0, Now basically we're gonna crack the same hash, right? If you were to crack a different hash, what you can use hash ID. Let me just take the hash off actually. I'm gonna take this hash and I'm gonna show you. If you are struggling with trying to find the hash, what you can do is use hash ID. And as you can see, just put a single quotation mark, paste selection. Right, close this. Paste selection, quotation mark, and -m. And that's what it's going to do is basically sort of guess, right? But you sort of can think of, right, if I'm cracking into a database, I'm most likely going to do MD5 hash, right? I'm not going to get NTLM, right? Right, if you don't know what these things are, just look them up, right? Or Radman, we're not going to get any of these, right? Most likely an MD5 or an MD4 or something like this, right? So we're just going to close this up. And what we're going to do is, oh, by the way, -m, what it does, it specifies the version, right? So as you can see, Hashcat mode 0, Hashcat mode 900, 2600, right? That's what -m does, right? So what we're going to do is use hash, the text file. So I've got, in my text file, I just got some hashes. We're going to use a word list. .txt. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this run, right? Oh, never mind, right? Let's do pop file disable. Right, and as you can see, basically we have cracked the hashes, right? So this is how we have cracked the hashes of a password file or a hash file, right? So I'm just going to quickly show you how to basically get hashes into a text file, right? So once you crack them, what you can do, for example, if you have a million hashes, you're not just going to copy and paste it, right? What we can do is force Hashcat or tell Hashcat to output to a text file, which could be very, very useful, right? Right, so we're just going to do is basically paste this command, right? I'm just going to go through the command in a second, just to find it. There we go, right? So basically Hashcat -a -m, you already know this part, right? Word list and O output, so it outputs a text file. Now, just a reminder that the output will be in the directory you're in, right? So as you can see, created a file on my desktop, and what we can do is we can cat it, right? So if I do hashes.txt, what did I name it? Oh, sorry, crack.txt. Right, so as you can see, it has outputted our hashes along with the plaintext passwords or plaintext secrets. Right, that's why I love Hashcat. Hashcat is very, very simple to use, very fast and very good. Simple to use as well. Any beginner can learn how to use Hashcat with. Right, so I want to show you a cool tool. And this tool is called John the Ripper. What John the Ripper allows you to do is recover passwords, basically, right? So if you lock yourself with a PDF document or a zip file or a 7-zip file, any file, basically, you can crack it, right? And I'm going to show you how to do this with John the Ripper. First thing you need to do is basically recognize what document or sort of what extension we're cracking, right? So I'm going to crack a PDF file. If you want to crack a zip file, it'll be absolutely the same for you. I'll show you how to sort of find all the functions of John the Ripper in a second. Now, basically, to see all the functions of John the Ripper, all you need to do is just come to /user bin, and if you type this command, which is just ls the wall or the pipe grep John, you're going to get a massive basically text. Yeah, just a massive text of John, basically sort of functions, and as you can see, we have 1 password to John, 7-zip to John. Right, let's go back to cracking. Okay, so now what we need to do is get the functions we want, right? So let's say we want, I'm going to crack a PDF password because that's like one of the most popular for me to showcase, and I think it's, I don't know, just let's crack a PDF file, right? So we're going to do is PDF to John, no, PDF to John, sorry, and then FBI secret.pdf. Now what we need to do is John is going to extract a password file hash, or the password hash from that file, right? So we're just going to need to create another file because we need a file to crack it, right? So we're just going to be pdf hash.txt, and now what we need to do is, right, so now all we need to do is just type in John and the hash file, or the basically the extracted file. So for me it's pdf hash.txt, and we need to specify the word list, so the -- word list equals, and then now just specify the absolute path to the word list. So in this case, I'm going to use rocu.txt. So user share word list rocu.txt, And if you let this run, what's gonna do is gonna take can take a couple minutes. It matters how long the password is or how complicated the password is. That's how long it's gonna take to decrack it, right? However, if you have cracked it before and you just want to see the password again, all you need to do is just type in -show without the word list, right? So as you can see, FBI secret.pdf equals password. And if I just come to the PDF file and I type in the password, just password, it will show me the contents of the file, right? That's how easy it is. Anybody can do this, right? It's very, very simple. Right, so the next tool I want to show you is a very, very important tool. And I'm not really doing this because I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with Nmap, but I'm highlighting the point of everyone using Nmap because I learned this from my own mistake. I used to not do reconnaissance, right? When I was doing CTFs, I was like, yeah, just let me hack the website, right? Because technically I was happy that I'm doing something, but I wasn't doing anything because I never knew anything. Because I never done reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is very important because I can basically go from zero, right? From you not knowing anything to maybe getting a vulnerability that's in the system, and then there you go, you can get shell access, or you can get a reverse shell within seconds, or you can get a Metasploit module loaded up and you can have a Metasploit session within seconds, right? So it is important that you do reconnaissance, right? And I'm going to demonstrate this in a second. Let me just get the IP address of my machine. Right, so basically just the sudo nmap is v192.168.88. The IP address you're gonna have to check for you how to check is just ipconfig or ifconfig in the terminal, right? Sudo nmap is v192.168. Actually, we're gonna use just v. It's faster. With the IP address that is 128, I believe. Yep, 128. Okay, so I'm just gonna just run, and what it should do, it should give us a quick result, right? So as you can see, there's no ports open. Right, but what allows you to do is actually 2 seconds. I know what I'm gonna do. Right, so basically what I've done is just to run a quick Python 3 web server. So as you can see, I just run ASV because it gives us extra details and it's a bit more detailed. So basically, as you can see, because I've opened a port, it says port 8000 TCP, so it gives you the protocol. Open, which means it's open, right, and accessible. Service HTTP, simple HTTP server 06, and it gives you the version. Now, let's say that this Python version could be vulnerable. We could do is go on internet, GitHub or anywhere, CVE or ExploitDB, and what we could do is exploit this, right, by whatever it says there, how to exploit, and it usually gives you a payload, right? I'll show you in the next session. I'm going to show you how to use ExploitDB. ExploitDB is a very, very powerful tool. As I basically, within seconds, you can know if something's vulnerable or no, right? So Nmap is a very good tool. Just play around with this. I'm not going to show you the full how to do Nmap because Nmap is very, very simple. There's lots of tutorials. I'm just showing you highlighting the basically importance of reconnaissance and Nmap. You don't need to use Nmap because you can use your own tool, but Nmap is very, very simple to use, right? So make sure that you use Nmap because Nmap is very, very powerful and useful. Actually, let me show you one more thing. I want to show you standard scripts. Right, maybe I'll show you some cool stuff. It usually does tell you cool stuff, but because there's nothing there, like there's nothing open on that virtual machine. Yes, as you can see, it also tells you HTTP server header, simple HTTP, and HTTP title directory listing 4. So it sort of tells you that this is a sort of a web FTP server, right? So because you can download files, you can list files, right? So make sure that you use Nmap, especially with the SV and SC flag, right? It can tell you a lot of things. Right, okay, so the next tool I want to show you is a basically directory busting tool. It's one of my favorite tools. I showed you this tool multiple times, right? But I want to show you how noisy this tool is. So basically, if you just run GoBuster, right? GoBuster, as I said, it's a directory busting tool. You can find files, domains, subdomains, anything you can really think of. Right, so if you basically just type sudo apt install GoBuster, it will install it for you, right? Once you do this, all you need to do is just type in GoBuster. Now, dir, right? If you actually type in GoBuster, it will tell you all the sort of settings you can set or the flags you want to set. However, I'm just going to show you how to look for directories and files. So if you do dir, -u specifies the URL. For me, because I'm running my own web server on my another virtual machine, I need to specify HTTP 192.168.88.128 port 8000 because it's a Python 3 server. And the word list, right? So I'm just going to run this, right? And I'm just going to let this run However, I'm just going to switch to my other server, which is this one. Yep. So as you can see, this is my terminal from my basically other server. And I just want to show you how noisy GoBuster is, right? This is basically a directory busting tool. And it doesn't really matter what you use. If you don't set it properly, this is how noisy it's going to be, right? So as you can see, it's making thousands and thousands of requests each second, right? And that's just a 20,000 entries word list. So imagine what happens if you set it to a couple million, right? So, but it's actually pretty fast, right? It's pretty fast, as you can see it on 20,000, but the reason is because it's a local host machine. It's hosted on the same computer, right? So it doesn't really go far, so it's pretty quick. As you can see, I also showed you the entry, right? So I'm not going to talk about this machine this tool about too much, because as I said, I already done thousands and thousands of tutorials. I'm just showing you guys for new beginners that haven't seen this tool yet, right? So as you can see, it displayed a basically directory that's available. Now, one important thing you need to learn is status codes. Status codes are very, very important. They're very, very important because if you don't know what's the difference between 200, 300, and 500, then you're going to be in big trouble, because you're going to be like, oh, I found something. Oh, forbidden, 403, forbidden. Oh, 500, server error, right? So you need to learn the HTTP status codes. That's very, very important that you do learn these things. Right, so the next tool I want to show you is called the Wappalyzer. Now, Wappalyzer helps you with basically a lot of things. It is basically used in discovering what extensions maybe, but libraries and like what security and what content management systems websites are using. Right, so let's say I will go to Hackers Arise, right? Let's go to Hackers Arise. It's a popular website that teaches you hacking, and basically what happens is, what I can do is it tells you all information about this, right? So as you have CMS, Wix, blogs, Wix, JavaScript frameworks, security, JavaScript libraries, and it can tell you a lot of things. Now, this is important for web application testing, right? Or for web testing, because you can find, right, it also tells you versions. However, this doesn't tell you any versions, right? Which is obviously good, because then it makes it about 50% harder for someone, because now I have to guess a version, or I have to do extensive research or go into config files to find a version, right? And then at the end of the day, it could be updated and I might have no CVs or vulnerabilities in the first place, right? So technically you could waste time, but you could also maybe not waste time and pay off, right? So Wappalyzer is very, very useful. I use Wappalyzer all the time, as it makes sort of my job easier, because then it tells me, right, okay, I'm against a Akamai WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, and okay, this is what's going to work, this is what's going to stop me, right? Also, it tells you, and it also allows you to make your life easier if you use a Wappalyzer. Now, basically, another sort of extension I want to show you is the it's the user agent, not Mac changer. It's the user agent changer. This allows you to basically change your user agents quickly. You don't have to go to the settings of your browser. You can just change it with this. This extension is very, very good. It allows you, actually, if you can look here through the settings, allows you to change your user agent to whatever you wish. So you can change it to Debian, you can change it to Chromium, you can change it to whoever you wish, right? So that's very, very good. It allows you to change your user agent very, very quickly. And what it also allows you to do is you can change a user agent to whatever you wish. So you can set to something, you can set it to whatever you want. This is useful for bug bounty, when the scope basically asks you to put a user agent with your username of HackerOne account. Or what you can also do is put XSS payloads into your user agent, which then it could make it work, which then it could execute stuff, right? So this is useful, and this is called, I'm not really sure, I should tell me, manage extension. User agent switcher and manager. This is a very, very good extension. Make sure to download it if you're a web pen tester. It'll make your life easier. I would recommend, even if you're not a web pen tester, if you're like just a CTF player, I do recommend getting this, as it can make your life easier and better, right? Just an easy tool. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything. Right, so basically the next resources I want to show you is, one of them is a website, one of them is basically a quick script that it'll make your life much easier and basically faster when it comes to deciding if it's a vulnerability or no, right? So basically, let's say we found a WordPress 2.5 version, doesn't really matter, just an example, just a keyword basically, right? What we're gonna do is run search exploit, and we're gonna run WordPress 2.5, right? And what this does, it basically, as you can see, it gives you a massive list of all the vulnerabilities that are within the WordPress, right? And it actually gives you the file itself, right? So you can copy this file and you can run it, right? So what we can do is we can say, like, let's say WordPress plugin this, I'm interested in this, remote file upload. What we can do is run this, right, by copying this basically path from the path, which I'll show you in a second. We can copy it and we can basically do whatever we want. We can execute it, we can test it and stuff, we can change stuff, right? I'll show you how to get this build right now. Right, so basically this is the path file, right? So if you go to cd user share exploit db exploits php, it's actually sorted. So if you go to web apps, and what you should have, as you can see, there's all the basically exploits CVEs and stuff, right? So you can basically look, oh, that's up, yeah. So as you can see, there's a lot of basically exploits in PHP, right? This doesn't end. There's a lot of files here, right? So that's how you get it, right? You just need to basically navigate through the numbers and stuff. Now the second option I want to show you is basically by going to exploitdb and doing the same thing. Let me just go to exploitdb. There we go. It might take a second. Shouldn't take long. Right, so basically another resource is the exploitdb. Now it's basically the exact same thing as the one on Kali. However, what this does, it basically allows you to tell or look at when it was disclosed, and sort of gives you more information and allows you to look through the exploit without actually, you know, navigating through all this BS, right? So what you can do is, for example, it gives you the most recent exploit, right? Because this goes in date. We can actually change it to 120. So as you can see, today is the 21st of May, and for basically the last exploit was on 19th, right? So there's not been any exploits for the last 2 days. What it does allow you to do is basically see like how many exploits are being basically introduced a day. What are sort of the exploits, the most popular? As you can see, there's the same guy, so he introduced about 6 exploits, right? Off bypass, right? So basically he's introduced quite a lot of exploits. So we can tell that if there's 6 exploits in one day and there's basically from the same guy, well, we can assume that whatever he's exploiting is pretty vulnerable, right? I'm not telling you to go around and go do test stuff, right? I'm just telling you sort of what this means, right? We can also look for maybe something similar. Maybe you're using something, right? We can see WordPress plugin WP stored XSS, right? So XSS exploitation, pretty popular amongst the bug bounty community, right? So you can basically look for stuff, right? Let's say I want to do, let's look for this employee management system. I don't know what that is. Never heard of it. Let's look through it. Oh, there we go, right? So basically, as you can see, it says exploit title, date, exploit author, stuff, and this is basically what we need to do, right? So it tells you the website, where we need to go. Now log in with the default credentials, visit the URL, and it tells you what to do, and you should be able to exploit this easily, right? Now, I'm not telling you to go around. As I said, this video is for ethical purposes only, or for your own purposes only. I'm not telling you about to do any illegal stuff. Don't do any illegal stuff, because you might go to jail, right? So I'm just showing you this because that's sort of a very good example, because when I first started, I never knew there's exploitdb, right? So basically the next tool I want to show you is called XSStrike. It is a very good tool. What it allows you to do is look for XSS vulnerabilities, right? So as you can see here, what I've done is I just found a parameter that is exploited easily. By the way, this is a website that you can train XSS on. It's perfectly legal for you to run these tools. Just don't do anything you're not exactly supposed to do, right? Don't try to go beyond what you're not supposed to do. Just learn and leave it, right? It's a good website. It teaches you XSS. Don't break the website, please, right? So basically, as you can see, what we have is found XSS vulnerability, right? So if I change this parameter, status equals good. If I change it to 5, it should take a second to load. right? So as you can see, what I've just done is I've exploited XSS reflected SSS vulnerability, right? So what we can do now is we can exploit XSS and possibly steal people's credentials, redirect them to another website, make fake pop-ups and stuff, right? So I will show you to do is we can do script. Let's do 1, 2, 3, and what we can do is called well, it didn't really work the way I intended it to work. Let's leave that for a second, right? What I'm going to show you is basically what I've done is I've downloaded the tool. I'll show you at the end basically of this demonstration how to download this tool and how to run it and stuff. So basically what we need to do is just python 3 XSStrike.py and the URL, right? So the URL is this, status, let me just remove this. So this is the URL. And once you launch it, what's going to do is just going to run some tests, right? As you can see, payloads generated 3000. It also tells you if the WAF is available, so web application firewall, so basically just a firewall for the websites. Reflections found 1, analyzing reflection, generating payloads and stuff. And it basically tells you how confident in sort of the efficiency is, right? So confidence, not big confidence, but we managed to work it, right? So if I take this payload, just copy it, copy selection, and just paste it right after the equals mark, what it's going to do is going to launch, right? So as you can see, I've got a pop-up, and if you get this pop-up upon inserting a payload or a script, it means you have found an XSS vulnerability, right? So as you can see, every time I hover on the details, it basically launches a pop-up. Now, one important thing is if you were to go for inspect and you were to, for example, just insert it into the HTML code, what you're doing is you're inserting basically self-XSS and it's not really available for bug bounty, right? That's as Proxychains said, it's lame XSS, right? So just to let you know that if you do it through the HTML code, it is not necessarily an XSS vulnerability. It is, but it's self-XSS, so it only affects you. It doesn't affect anybody else, right? For anybody else to get affected, you need to find a vulnerability within the web application, or as you can see, like me, I have done it through the URL, right? So if you do it through the URL, you have a chance of succeeding in bug bounty with the XSS vulnerability. Right, so basically I didn't record audio, or my OBS basically scammed me with audio. So I'm just going to go through it, and it is very, very simple how to install XSStrike at any get clone Python file, right? So basically what you need to do is just git clone this URL, right? So once you clone it, come to wherever you want. I do recommend something on desktop as it is basically the easiest way to access stuff, right? So just come to, I do recommend making a new folder. If not, then just, it's absolutely fine if you don't make one. So I'm just going to go to cd test. And what we need to do is just git clone the file, right? Once you get clone it, what you need to do is run pip install our requirements. Now, however, you may have to go to the file, so another folder. I should just fucking show you. Right, so basically I want to show you some websites. So this part of the video for about 10 minutes is going to be all about websites that you need to basically learn as a beginner. Even if you're a sort of, you know what you're doing with physical hacking, you sort of still need to, I would say, use these websites because they're very, very powerful. The first website is Google. Googling everything is a very, very powerful mindset or a sort of resource that you can use. Even I do it, even the best hackers do it, right? Obviously, you're going to research HTML used in websites, right? What I mean is, like, let's say you are looking for a certain information, right? Let's say you need an XSS payload, right? All we need to do is type in XSS payload, right? And what you get is the first, basically, website is you get information. What even is XSS? How to use it, how to exploit it, and you have even tools, right? XSStrike, the one I used, it's a simple tool, like I showed you 2 seconds ago. You get Proxychains, which is basically information, what even is XSS and how to exploit it and what to do. And as you can see, it also tells you the exploitation for Firefox, right? This tells you for iOS, Firefox, and Google Chrome, right? So Googling everything is a powerful, powerful information, and sort of also allows you to do so much things, right? As you can see, OWASP, right? OWASP is a very good website. It tells you how to execute it with a filter. Like, so as you can see, this is basic XSS test without filter evasion, right? There's some basically encoding, like as you can see, this is encoded. So you have a higher chance of this being exploited and possibly succeeding if you try to execute on a website, right? So basically Google looking for stuff is very, very powerful, and you should Google everything, right? Even if it's absolutely stupid, you should Google it, because you don't know what you can find. I Google stuff all the time, and the stuff I find is very, very powerful, right? The second, right, so the next website I want to show you is basically Shodan.io. Shodan is very, very powerful. What you should do is you should sign up, you can make a free account, and what it does, it gives you extra permissions. It basically, you can look for so much stuff, right? So for example, you can actually search up your own IP address, and you can see maybe how it's exposed to the internet. What you can also do is look for cameras within your cities. What you can do is look within basically anything you may want to do, right? Shodan is basically very, very popular, and basically it's used for targets. However, please don't do it anything you're not supposed to, because you can get in trouble, right? Just a quick disclaimer, I'm not really, just a quick showcase of this website. I'm not going to go into detail. You can check out for yourself. It's pretty cool. So basically the next website or tool I want to show you is the OSINT framework, right? So for example, there's information about operation security. So basically like being anonymous or making yourself not easily doxed or whatever you want to call that, right? So as you can see, OPSEC, anonymous browsing. So what you can do is you can have a Tor, anonymous VPNs, PIV user agent, VPN test, browser test, proxy test, and anything you can really think of. Right, so if you want to be anonymous online, this website is very, very good. Or if you want to basically people search engines, what you can do, I'm pretty sure this is for America, most of it. And what you can do is you can go on and look for people, right? So if you want to find someone, there you go, you can use this, right? This is good for social engineering. Oh, I'm blocked, it doesn't matter, right? So this is good for social engineering, especially. So if you want to find something, you're free to use this website. Do as you wish, however, remember, don't do anything you're not supposed to do, because you can get in trouble. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you about Burpsuite. I'm going to try to basically make this as easy as possible. However, Burpsuite may require a little knowledge. However, as I said, I'll try to explain everything through bit by bit so you guys understand what I'm talking about and stuff, right? So in Burpsuite, what we're going to do is I've already showed you guys how to like set up the proxies and stuff in my past video, which was from a couple of months ago. So if you haven't seen it, just to make sure check it out, it should be titled something, how to install Burpsuite on Kali Linux. And just check that out. I show you how to get Burpsuite, and I show you how to get the proxy. Right, I'm not going to show you that again because I've showed this multiple times. I'm just not going to show you guys, right? So basically what Burpsuite is a web application pen testing tool. It is very, very useful. It's very helpful when it comes to looking through the source code, or basically making requests and then analyzing what the response is, and then you can see basically what the response is, the response source code or the response file, and it is very, very useful. However, some websites will not allow you to run proxies, right? They will allow you to run a VPN, but they won't allow you to run a proxy like Burpsuite, right? Which is a bit stupid, but whatever. But okay, right? So basically, once you come to the dashboard, this is a community edition, by the way, right? If you don't have the same window as me, that means your Burpsuite is not updated. Just to make sure updated, because then you're gonna get the same window as me. And if you're a beginner, it will especially help you, right? Okay, so today we're gonna focus on 4 tabs, maybe 5, 6, I'll see, right? So we're gonna focus on proxy, intruder, repeater, and decoder. And I'll show you some extra settings because they're pretty useful. Right, so how basically proxy works is, let me actually show you. So if I come to see HTTP 192, this please, thank you. Right, so basically if I intercept a request, let me just forward this, I don't really need this request. I lagged out, oh fuck. Right, so basically if you just click intercept and you refresh your web page or the basically website that you want to sort of pen test, as you can see we got a request, right? And basically what these codes are HTTP headers. Now I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can sort of make out what these mean, right? So we get our website, we're not sending any data. If you were to send any data, you would usually get post request, right? We also get the HTTP protocol, which is, this one's actually pretty vulnerable to, if I'm not wrong, HTTP request direct smuggling or redirect smuggling, something like that. We get the host, which is usually the website or the IP address. User agent, this is our user agent, so basically this tells the website how to load it, because some websites, as you may know, like iOS and Linux have different like ways of loading and stuff. And as you can see, for us, it's just Mozilla Windows, right? I've set it to even though I'm on Linux, I'm using Mozilla, doesn't make a difference, right? Just tells you some other information, and that's not really something we need to be concerned of right now. But basically, these are HTTP headers. You see them a lot if you use Burpsuite, right? You basically have enough of them, but they're pretty useful. And especially what you can do is with some HTTP headers, if you inject a HTTP header, what you can do is you can get certain vulnerabilities. So anything from, if I'm not XXC, if I'm not wrong, RCE, LFI, even cross-site scripting, right? XSS. So it is pretty useful. These HTTP headers can pretty be exploited, right? Actually, let me check. But anyways, let me show you basically that's sort of how proxy works. Now, if you want to see some HTTP requests, what you can do is come to Burpsuite and, well, HTTP history, which is pretty important, right? This basically allows you to sort of go, as you can see, I'm just going through basically the file itself, right? So WP login PHP. And what this allows you to do is pretty powerful if it's not secured enough or basically vulnerable, that to the point that you can inject your own code, or you can take basically some function or some piece of code and you can sort of change it to your own values. I've done it before. I may possibly insert a quick video right here in the video just to show you how sort of what the capabilities of Burpsuite is. And that's not even like sort of the high level. This is very basics, right, of hacking. Right, so but basically what we can do here is you can look through the basically some interesting stuff. I'm not sure. Yeah, so what you can do is you can basically look through here and maybe you'll find something interesting, right? These are basically responses. /secret. Yeah, so you can look for some stuff, maybe you'll find something not really important as far as I can see. Right, so let's say we haven't found anything interesting. I'm not gonna go through the source code because I'm not really interested in the source code for today. Right, so let's go back to intercept. But as you can see, basically what happens if I send basically a HTTP request or a interceptor request by basically just inputting some values into this text box, what we get is we get some credentials. So as you can see, you can see your own credentials and stuff. That's absolutely normal, right? But what you see is login and password. Now this is basically enough for us to use Hydra. However, we're not going to use Hydra, right? We're not going to use Hydra to brute force. What we're going to use is Burpsuite. Because Intruder is a very powerful tab, especially if you're doing any API testing and you're trying to fuzz for the parameters or just some kind of information, right? So we're going to go into Intruder, but how do we go to Intruder? We're going to press right click and send to Intruder. Once you send it to Intruder, what we get is basically a new tab, right? So basically this is our request. Make sure it says post, make sure it says the correct website and stuff, but obviously if you intercept the correct sort of web page, it should be absolutely fine, right? So go back to Intruder. And there's basically a couple attack options, right? So basically sniper is if you're trying to brute force for one option. So for example, you're trying to either brute force the password or the login, right? It won't work for two. What you need to use to brute force two things at once is battering ram, right? And it's very useful. However, with the community edition, it's I'll show you guys the problem in a second, right? So let me show you how to use this. Basically, we need to look for the parameter that we want to exploit, right? So for me, it's 1 to 3. That's sort of my input. I do recommend putting something that you sort of recognize and can see straight away because it'll make your life easier. Also, as you can see, the sort of the credentials and the parameters are the basically submit options are highlighted on red, right? So if you just come here and highlight it and press add here, right? You can also clear, you can auto and refresh, add, and you can see it basically adds these $signs, right? If you just do the same thing to the password parameter, what we get is basically two payloads now, right? We got two payloads that need to be fuzzed, or two positions to be fuzzed, right? But before you start, you need some kind of word list or some kind of input or some kind of entries for Burpsuite to say, okay, I'm gonna fuzz this, right? Because that is important because, as I said, Burpsuite is used in multiple things, right? Website is not just logins and account pages, right? It's API, from anything from API to crawling to fuzzing to looking for directories to, as I said, login pages to administrator rights and stuff like that, right? So we need to come to intruder and payloads. This is the second tab, right? Now what we need to do is we need to look for a word list, right? Now the word list I can recommend is XSStrike, right? That's sort of like the most common credentials. However, if you're going for overkill, use RockU. But before you press open on RockU, it will lag your system. That's absolutely okay. However, it will lag your system, as I said, right? I don't know why it does. I think it's because it's a massive file. It's about 15 million passwords. I guess that's the reason. And possibly most likely the reason, right? Because it's 15 entries that has to put in. So try to keep the sort of the word list as good as possible. Try to do the reconnaissance properly, and then put the word list in, right? Don't just try to bash in any word list and hope for the best because you're not going to get nowhere. You might get somewhere, but after a month, right? As I said, this is a community edition, and I'm going to show you the problem in a second. So load, and I'm not going to load any word list because it's going to take too long. I'm going to put my own entries. I know what the password is and the login. I'm just going to put some random entries to show you guys how to look for stuff, right? So I'm going to put like 1234 password, root, administrator, let's do moderator, guest, let's put password. What else we're going to put? Let's put mod, root, MSF console, right? Anything, that's enough, right? And we're going to put the real credentials. Okay, so let's just start attack. If you come here to the right corner, it says start attack. It's on orange. If you just press start attack and press OK, make sure you do press OK because it's not going to let you interact with this second window, right? And as you can see, what we get is basically a quick. It was very, very quick. Now, the reason with Burpsuite, it usually takes. Actually, I'm just going to show you. Maybe can I show you? Yes, of course I can. Okay, just start attack. Right. So what I'm going to do is basically I put 300 entries in, and it's pretty quick. But I guess because it's a local host and it's like on the same network. But oh, there we go. Never mind. Right. So as you can see, it started to slow down. Now what's going to happen is 1 request per second. So every second we get 1 request. But if you think about it, if I put 15,000 entries in, it's going to take 15,000 seconds. If I'm not wrong, that's about half of a day. I'm not waiting half of a day for this to load, right? Especially just for a login web page. I'm not waiting that long. It ain't happening, right? So something for basically what I have this is for web pen testing, I use Burpsuite. And for anything that has to do any sort of brute force or basically fuzzing anything, I would use Zap. Zap is an open source alternative to Burpsuite. It's sort of the same. It's open source by, and it's basically sponsored by OWASP. And it basically is unlimited and it can make thousands. It can make about 10,000 requests within a minute or even less, I think 30 seconds, right? I'm not really sure how many requests because I haven't used it in a long time, but it is pretty fast, 15 times faster than Burpsuite, right? However, if you were to get the Burpsuite Professional, it is not limited. And Burpsuite Professional is a very good basic license to get if you're doing anything. If you're going to do bug bounty especially, it is a good website to get because it gives you some benefits and some basically advantages that OWASP doesn't have, right? It is good to get a Burpsuite Professional. However, if you're a beginner, don't spend 400 or 500, I think it's like $500 or pounds now. Don't spend that money if you're a beginner. You're not going to get nowhere. Right, unless you really have money and you don't care, just buy it then, right? I do recommend it. You should get it if you're planning to do bug bounty or anything basically website related, right? This is a good program and a license to get, right? Okay, so let's go through the results now and let's see how it is basically. Right, so upon basically getting your results from Intruder, what we get is basically, as you can see, let me just make this bigger, right? As you can see, we basically get lots of status codes. These are basically HTTP responses. It shows you the amount of requests. It shows you the amount of payloads, sorry, the payloads itself, right? So what sort of it fuzzed for, right? It shows you the responses, and it shows you the length. Now, all of these are important, right? Maybe not the requests, because it really doesn't make a difference for us, right? Basically, what we get is, as you can see, we get multiple payloads, right? Basically, we get the whole HTTP request. Now, these are very, very important because this gives us basic information if we've been successful or not. But if you know HTTP status codes, as you can see, all of these are 200 and we only have one 302, right? Now, does this mean that this one's not real and these are basically not successful? No. It's actually the completely way around, right? Obviously, if you sort of think about it, right, I have, 13 requests, right? 12 of them are 200 and one of them is only 302. What we're doing here is we're trying to brute force a specific account. So what we're doing is, it's actually a specific account, I'm right. What we're trying to do is look for a difference. We're not trying to look for success, we're trying to look for a difference, right? So if you look here, right, I have basically found the status code, which is 302. Okay, that's different than other ones. The response is a bit slightly bigger than everyone else, right? Apart from, it's actually one of the highest. But also the length doesn't match. It's the smallest length, right? It can either be the biggest or the smallest, right? So therefore, if you come to this request, right, and take a look at it, it doesn't really tell you anything, right? Does it tell you the response? You can actually look through the response as well, right? It is a completely different response. And if you come through the response, it actually tells you set cookie WordPress something, and actually, as you can see here, it says set cookie WordPress logged in, right? And it actually tells you that you've been successful to /secret/wp-admin, right? Which means we have been successful. So when it comes to intruder, what we're looking for, obviously you should analyze everything, especially if something has obviously no, like these requests are like, let's say, request 2 and 6, right? Let's actually, can I highlight it? Yes. Let's say these two requests, basically they're absolutely the same, right? You should still sort of check what it has done and sort of what the response was, right? You should check obviously the status codes, but you should not really focus on it. As I said, what you should focus on this one, right? This one is positive. So you should focus on this request, right? Because this one has been successful, right? So as I said, if you're fuzzing anything, make sure to look for the status code. Response, I would say response is sort of the smallest indicator. It's most likely the status code and the length. That's what I sort of look for whenever I'm doing stuff, right? So make sure to look for the length and the status code, right? So now upon logging in, what we can do is just log in, right? So we can use admin. I'm not going to log in because these are the positive credentials and that's not the point. The point of me is to show you guys how to use intruder, right? So basically what you can do is with intruder, you can, as I said, fuzz for anything. You can fuzz for API parameters, from directories to basically anything, right? Obviously there's certain tools that specialize in API testing or in API fuzzing or directory busting. Like directory busting could be like GoBuster, right? You wouldn't really use Burpsuite to look for files hidden in root directories and stuff, but you can. I think professional license is pretty good for like doing stuff like that, right? But we don't have a professional license, so I need to use the free tools, right? So something to be aware of, as I said, Burpsuite, very, very good too, right? Let's close this down and let me show you guys the repeater tab now, right? But I'm gonna switch to a different website with this one though. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you how to use the repeater. Repeater is actually one of my favorite tabs. I would say one of the most popular as well when it comes to checking your payloads, learning stuff. Basically, repeater is a multi-tool, right? What it allows you to do is test basically your payloads, look for errors and stuff like that, right? I'll show you how to test all of this in a second, right? So let me just intercept a request. So if I just check stock, there you go. Right, let me actually close this. I don't need this anymore. There we go. Right, forward, right. So as you can see, we have a request, right? So we have product ID, store ID. And what we can do is we can sort of try different commands and different sort of payloads, right? But basically, if we were to do it with the proxy, it would be immensely dumb, right? The reason is because it would take too long. We would have to intercept a request. We have to refresh so many times. We would have to just be very, very inefficient, right? So in this case, what we can do is we can right click and send it to repeater. Upon sending the repeater, we just make sure to send the request to make sure that we basically get response, right? We can also do render. Render, what it does is basically renders the website. However, for this case, because we just have the API, it won't render it, right? It just renders the result, which is, if you click on it, it would show you 62 or whatever, right? Obviously, because we are connected now, if you check stock, it basically shows you a number, right? This is interacting as a website, like check stock. You know how you like on websites, like when you want to buy stuff, like especially like the local websites, they have these like this amount of stock we have left, right? Whatever, right? So basically, it's most likely connected to something. I don't believe they change it by hand because that's very inefficient, right? So it's most likely connected to something. If it's connected to something, it's vulnerable, right? Most likely vulnerable. I'm not saying it is at the time, but it could be in the future or later, or you just need to find a way to exploit it, right? So in this case, what we can do is we can test what it actually does, right? Right, so basically what we can do is we can basically sort of guess, right? So in this case, we're going to send it to repeater. And what we can do is we can, there we go, right? So it sends us the request, right? Let's just make it raw because that's the best. So upon sending the request, right, it's basically, I call it a dummy request. We send a normal request like a normal user, or an expected request to see how the website responds, or what's the website response, or how the website's behaving. As you can see, it basically gives us normal response. But what happens if I change the request, right? So I change the product ID or the store, it's product ID, the product ID to something else, right? So instead of 1, which is tells the basically the website or whatever is behind this, tells us, okay, product 1, store 1, okay, what happens if and then what happens if I change it, right? So let's change it to ls, right? And as you can see, what we just have done basically is we have printed the directory along with the username. Not really, because the ls is basically list directory. However, also has give us home peter stock report.shell. So we know it's a shell file that's basically responsible for this stock report, right? And basically that was the whole level. But what repeaters allows us to do, as I said, right, I love this tool because it allows us to basically look for stuff, right? So let's say I want to come out of this directory, I want to go into etc password file, right? It's not going to allow me, but what repeater does allow you, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's actually interesting that it says okay. It should not allow me, but okay, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't display it, but it says okay. It should say 403 forbidden or server error, but whatever, right? So basically, what we can do is we can test different payloads, right? So we can test dummy requests, we can test XSS payloads. Especially this is good for XSS payloads when it comes to bypassing filters or bypassing filters for file uploads and stuff, right? So I've said this before, Burpsuite is very, very powerful. You should learn Burpsuite right now, right? Actually, for this best case, for me to show you like the true potential of repeater, let me actually change the levels to path traversal. It's the best. Okay, so I'm just going to show you path traversal. It's very, very simple. Right, so basically, I found basically the level I wanted to. So basically, what I love about repeater is, as I said, allows you to look through certain requests, and allows you to basically throw at the website request and then just test, okay, does this work? Okay, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Right? As you can see, I just display, I'll show you how to do this, right? So we have found that basically path traversal or LFI is basically sort of the same thing. Basically what we can do is we can look for certain directories before going for a request. That's why I love repeater. That's why I love Burpsuite. That's why also I say you need Burpsuite, because it's the best. It really is the best, right? I used to not be good at Burpsuite because I never knew how to use it. But once you understand how to use it, it's the best program that you ever get, right? So basically what we can do is we can do this, right? So what we can do is basically navigate through the files, right? So basically, let's say I'm trying to look for files, right? So what I can do is I can try and send, like, even if you don't know what you're doing, you can sort of see and try to do, right? Like, you can look for files or requests or something, right? Allows you to test simply for files, right? So let's say I'm looking for etc password file, right? So basically what I've done is I found it. Basically I just spammed some requests and it worked, right? And that's the best about Burpsuite. You can just spam some random request even if you don't know what you're doing, and you might get somewhere, right? So something I love about Burpsuite is this, right? You can just spam some requests, spam anything, and it works, right? And as I said, you can just look for files or just anything, right? What you can do, yeah. Right, so that'll be it for sort of the most important tabs. Now we get additional options like the decoder. Decoder, as it sort of means, or sort of gives you a clue what it says, it's the decoder, decode something, right? So what we can do is we can get basically some HTML, base64, ASCII, hex, some hex values, octo-binary and gzip, and we can decode it to plain text or other options, right? Now this could be useful whenever you're sort of maybe offline, or it could be useful as maybe you don't sort of have enough RAM or something and you're running, or it could be basically maybe handy, right? I'm just going to show you as it's pretty good to maybe notice that this exists. I don't really use this personally because I use online tools, because for me it's a bit faster than going Burpsuite, because I didn't have to launch Burpsuite just to get this, right? So I use the online tools, but I'm going to show you how to use this. Right, so basically what I've done is I just copied some base64 value, and what I've just done is decode as base64, right? So also what decoder is also good is if you're sort of just getting familiar with encoding and stuff, or you don't know what specific encoding is, what you can do is we can basically look for certain, certain encoders, and what you can do is test which encoder this actually is, right? Other than that, I don't really use this. It's really up to you if you want to use this. I'm showing you just how to use this. So all you need to do is just decode as a certain value, and it will show you, right? As you can see, decode as base64 and encode as plain. Oh, there we go. You don't need to do that. Just decode it as base64. It's a bit confusing how to work this around, but I guess I don't know, like, because it's like if I do decode base64 and then try to do plain text, it sort of doesn't work, right? But it doesn't matter. Maybe I don't understand how to use this, but that's how you use it, right? So if you find a value, just put it through the decoder and try and see what it makes, if it makes any sense. Especially for base64. Base64 is commonly used in websites, right? So for certain like values and stuff and secrets, it could be used as base64. It could also be used for XSS payloads. Other than that, I don't really have a reason, I think, to keep you guys around with Burpsuite. I think that's sort of it with my quick tutorial. One thing could be useful is if you're, Jesus Christ, where's the setting? One important setting is if you come to the proxy settings and you come to if you type in sandbox. What this does is basically allows Burpsuite to run without sandbox. So if you for some reason can't get the proxy set up on Mozilla, it should absolutely work for you. Then what you can do is you can basically enable this option and open the browser. What it will do is it will basically run the proxy on the browser for you, right? So if for some reason you can't get the proxy set up on Mozilla, like me, what you can use is Burpsuite's own browser with the sandbox, right? And basically anything you do is basically the same as you would have on Mozilla, right? Just a simple fix if for some reason you can't get it set up. It is useful, especially for THM, try hack me or hack the box, right? Because every time you launch the try hack me VM, right, it resets. So it's pretty useful if you just turn on the sandbox and you just use this instead of setting up the proxy every single time, right?